Hello, I'm Rob,
And he's Rob.
and welcome to Impossible Mission here at the Geek Show. And today, we're talking about a big one, backwards compatibility.
I'm glad you said it that way. I'm glad we're going with backwards compatibility. When you said big one, I was thinking, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done?
Yeah, it's a big one, because it's in the discussion. It's been in the discussion for a long time now, so just to throw a pithy title at it for YouTube reasons, let's just say, how important is backwards compatibility?
Yeah, I mean, you know when you buy a new console, right? Is backwards compatibility something that is essential for you? Is it a deal breaker as to whether you buy a console or not? And does the type of backwards compatibility actually matter?
Well, jumping on the PlayStation 1, because they've kind of openly been talking about how the fact that generations do matter, even though they seem to be sort of sketchy on it.
Yeah.
But let's just assume that's the stance that they're going on, and I'm not shaking from it. Generations do matter. Yeah. It's not important for that sort of stance, because they want you to commit to this new piece of technology and buy the new things for this new piece of technology. The way they're looking at it is from a completely corporate stance, because they've already got your money. They're not going to get more money with backwards compatibility. They've already got the money that they could have got from that, if that works as a sentence. I'm not sure. So
it does.
So from a purely business angle, backwards compatibility does not matter.
Yeah, but I mean, from a consumer perspective, backwards compatibility, I'd say, is a lot more important from a consumer's perspective, because at the end of the day, let's take Blu-ray and DVD as an example, right? DVD was around for a long time until Blu-ray came around, yeah?
Yeah, Blu-ray players play DVDs.
Yeah, and loads of people had DVD collections and didn't immediately dive into getting a Blu-ray player. Lots of people.
Well, Blu-ray players are kind of like not many people have them. They're kind of like for collectors only.
Yeah, now they are. But when people bought Blu-ray players, they bought them because it was a new upgraded piece of technology, but it'd still play their DVDs. They didn't have to go and replace their entire DVD collection just so they could watch it on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I think there's a more important question here. I think it's about keeping hold of things.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about movies have had a great deal of problems, because when you go back to pre-70s, pre-60s, they didn't keep all the films. So There's all sorts of examples of lost films. There's all sorts of films which are beyond repair, and they're in somebody's basement, the original master print, and all sort of higgledy-piggledy. And that was sort of pre-movie sort of taking an interest in I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It's not restoration. It's posterity. It's making sure you've got all of these things that are here for posterity.
Yeah.
Video games aren't doing that, much like movies aren't, because, you know, there was a big huffah about the fact that Scott Pilgrim was deleted. It's been It's going to be reinstated any time. PT was deleted on the whim of the developers.
Yeah.
So where's the posterity for those games? They're just sort of deleted and then they don't exist anymore. And that's why backwards compatibility matters on that level.
Yeah, it matters on that level. I mean, it's one of the reasons. I mean, I have this constant complaint. I bemoan the fact that when people talk about gaming during the 80s and 90s, they only ever talk about console gaming. They forget that there was the Commodore 64, the ZX Spectrum.
This is a hill you'll die on, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I will flog that horse until people sit up and take notice that there was an entire section of video games from that era that people blatantly ignore, and even now still gets ignored. And there are some classic games from computer games.
I'm not going to doubt that, but that horse is going to look like that Jesus guy from Passion of the Christ by the end of it. It's going to be it's going to be a red fleppy thing.
Yeah, but it'll be a holy thing. But here's the point, right? Here's my point. There is nowhere now where I can go back and play any games from the ZX Spectrum or the Commodore Amiga or the Commodore 64 short of getting one of those Commodore 64 mini things, or finding the cassettes on eBay, buying a Commodore 64, or illegal emulation. But the thing is, where do I find those ROMs? There is no actual kind of legal, I use the term loosely, way. There's no archive of these things. And I would love it if someone like Microsoft or Sony said, you know what? We're going to start releasing old Amiga games as kind of this cultural, this video games archive thing.
Well, they should do that anyway.
Put them on PlayStation Network.
It shouldn't just be It shouldn't just be in museums. They should do that anyway.
But you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything is so hidebound and kind of cliquey, and it annoys me.
But the thing is, when you sort of turn it on the other mediums, you turn the behaviour of the video game industry on the other mediums, and you realise how bloody stupid video games really are. I mean, just picture it. A book is 7 years old. Okay, deleted that book now, it doesn't exist anymore. You have to go really hard to find it, and it's been deleted off all the shop shelves.
Oh, please. I mean, you're using the book analogy. That's been used for other aspects of video game industry stupidity.
Movies are the same, though. Movies. A movie's 7 years old. If that was the case, right, you'd have like the first 3 years of the MCU, which people are so fond of, wouldn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
that's how short memory it is. But,
yeah. Using your book example, I mean, the whole aspect of DLC and stuff like that wouldn't exist. I mean, it doesn't exist in publishing. It doesn't exist in movies. You can't, when you buy a Blu-ray of a movie, you get that movie.
Well,
you don't have to buy extra bits of the movie. Well, you don't have to buy extra bits of the movie as downloadable content, do you?
No, but you have pre-order bonuses where people try to get the first prints. So there's that.
Yeah.
But it's a stretched analogy, but it's the video game behaviour with a lot of things. If they put it on other mediums, it really does amplify the stupidity of video games, really.
Yeah, I have a collection of video games. I collect specific types of video games, horror, RPG, that sort of thing, yeah? And a few action adventures, a few platformers, but I mainly collect video games. I have a lot of them from, going back decades.
Yeah.
And I can only play those games on certain consoles. The new Mega Drive Mini and the SNES Mini and stuff like that, I can use those, that's not a problem. But if I want to play a Sega Saturn game, I can only play it on a Sega Saturn or on a PC emulator of Sega Saturn. Same with the Dreamcast games, And that's a constant source of annoyance, because what I'd love is if there was a console where, an up-to-date console, because what we're talking about is the difference between a calculator and a modern mobile phone. And I'm talking a 1980s calculator and a modern mobile phone, right? Mobile phone has a calculator built in. It doesn't take up much space or anything like that. If you could take a PS1, right?
No, it's just when you said old calculator, the only thing that ever goes through my head is putting in boobies 8008 135.
We all know that one. We all did that at school.
We all did it.
But if it would be easy for Sony to put a PS1 emulator into a PlayStation 4 and 5. Even a PlayStation 2 emulator.
I wouldn't say it'd be easy, it'd be expensive. Which
I don't think it'd be that expensive.
Would it be expensive, given how touted all of this technology they keep on talking about? I think Xbox could do that, and they seem interested in that, but Sony, they seem so very... To go back to that, their bleeding edge technology is a hill that they are dying on.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. This is why I say I don't think it'd be that difficult, because you can already get PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 emulators on the PC, and they've just been coded by people in a bedroom somewhere.
Yeah, but Sony is special, aren't they? The thing is, just going back to the movie comparison, you get movies, like, I review a lot of movies on the side, movies stretching from, like, as far back as, like, 1919.
Earlier than that, you've reviewed some like old silent stuff.
Well, that is silent, 1919, but yeah. My point is, those things are reissued.
Yeah.
We get games that are reissued in the sense of the classics. They might have like a fresh pot of paint over them. There might be a complete rebuild from the ground up. There might be all sorts of things. It might just be a collection of things like the Mega Drive collections are. But that's a specifically curated thing on somebody's whim. I know there's all sorts of licensing issues, just as it is with movies. Licensing movies is a nightmare, mainly because of music, but that's not the point. The thing is, why can't consoles be reissued?
Yeah.
I know that it brings up all sorts of questions, like how do you get the cartridges? I don't think you need to. For the people who backwards compatibility really matters, they'll continue to collect the stuff. The new stuff doesn't need to be made. All they need is for a console to work. Because the idea of TV technology is another aspect of backwards compatibility that never gets talked about. If you try to you can't get a TV, like not a modern 4K TV, to hook up to a SNES.
Yeah.
It just sort of, the TV would just start laughing. It'd develop a personality and start laughing at the technology. So you've constantly got to have this old banger of a CRT monitor to play these games. I think the answer to backwards compatibility, honestly, is just reissue the consoles, give them a HDMI port, give them a modern power supply.
And an internet connection.
Yeah, and that's all you really need to do.
I'll tell you something, right? Whoever decides to buy up the licenses for the games that were released on like the Amiga and the Commodore 64, whichever company decides to do that and basically brings out a piece of kit where you can download Amiga games and Commodore 64 games from the internet onto just this console. It can have a decently sized hard drive. It doesn't need a big hard drive. We're talking about Amiga games and Commodore 64 games. We're talking about megabytes, not gigabytes.
Yeah.
You know? And we're not even talking like hundreds of megabytes. And these were all on like, was it 3.5 inch floppy disks?
Well, the 8-inch graphics, what's that?
16-bit graphics?
8-bit graphics and plunky plonk sound effects and music.
Was the Commodore 64 and 16-bit graphics for the Amiga. If you take a company like, you remember Psygnosis, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. As a publisher, Psygnosis was active, I think, during the 90s mainly. I think it was
the 80s, 90s.
It was mid-80s to late 90s, but during that time, they released a crap load of games. When I say a crap load, just, you know, if you look at the Wikipedia page, there's just this massive list of games that they released as a company. And that was the same for companies like US Gold and Ocean and all sorts of others like that. Gremlin Software was another one. I can't even remember what happened to them. And you have this massive catalogue of games that could be playable on a console. You know? Could be playable.
Yeah, which is why I think what Microsoft's doing is actually quite good.
Yeah.
I'm not a Microsoft player. I've tried and tried to be one. But it's just square peg, round hole for me. But
which is fair enough.
What I will acknowledge is the fact that they've continuously kept their internal architecture of their machine consistent. So the Xbox One, or Xbox original run, games will play on the new one.
Yeah.
That shows, like, not just sort of, it keeps people like the retro fans happy. There's that aspect to it. But also it shows a faith in gaming.
Yeah. But I think also they learned their lesson with the Xbox 360 because the backwards compatibility fiasco from the Xbox 360, I think that really made them sit up straight and take notice as to how important backwards compatibility was to gamers.
No, it's the same with Nintendo, though, just to return to that point. I think having stuff where you've got to pay through the nose over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, look at Nintendo's policy on backwards compatibility. It deletes it and reinstates it and makes you pay for it over and over again. Like this thing with the Mario Legends or whatever this collection's called, where you get Mario 64 Sunshine Galaxy.
Yeah.
They basically just put it in a... They've done a Windows paint on it.
Yeah.
So they've put no effort in it whatsoever. So the thing is, it doesn't show faith in the history of gaming because it's kind of like, I've got all these games that one side, I've got all these games I loved as a child. I'd love to play again. I like to visit them over and over and over again. But Nintendo's modern policy over here is like, ignore all that boring crap. Look at the shiny stuff. Ooh, shiny, 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 shiny. But I want this old stuff. I love this old stuff. Shut up. Shiny.
Do you know what seriously pisses me off about that Mario collection? Right,
but that is what it is like. But
what pisses me off the most about it? What pisses me off the most about it is I own all three of those games.
Yeah.
Right, and I can't play a single one of them in their original form using the Switch. There's no way for me, who owns those games already, to actually use the Switch to play them on the Switch in any way, shape, or form. Whereas Super Mario Sunshine, I could easily play on the Wii.
His idea,
Yeah.
I think Microsoft have got that sort of tackled.
Yeah.
As far as their footprint in the games industry and how they could look at backwards compatibility and making all these old games sort of accessible now.
Yeah.
They're doing fine. I don't think they need any compliments. But Sony, first up, I think they're basically wasting PlayStation Now.
Yeah,
I think that, personally, if PlayStation Now was this online download, streaming, I don't care which is which, but either of them service where I paid, I don't know, $10 a month, and I had access to the entire PlayStation history.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see 2 million, 3 million people on PlayStation Now. You'd be looking closer to Xbox Games Pass numbers, because the PlayStation history is amazing, and double that probably for Nintendo. Nintendo's gaming history is even better.
Right. Here's something, right? There's loads of Castlevania fans, yeah? Loads of Castlevania fans out there, yeah?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Don't worry, I'm not talking about modern Castlevania, right? How many of them are aware that Castlevania Symphony of the Night, a game that if you buy it secondhand on eBay, will cost you upwards of 150 quid to buy.
Really?
On the PlayStation 1. Yes, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, right, will cost you upwards of 150 quid on eBay, right?
That's really bad when the scalpers have got hold of it, hasn't it?
Yeah, but, well, that's the thing. It's because the physical copies of the game are very difficult to get hold of. But how many of them are aware that on PlayStation Network, Castlevania Requiem, which is Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood, you can buy for $3.99 right now.
Yeah. It's just, I think with the case of PlayStation, their promotion of what they have, what they could use, their history is atrocious.
Yeah.
They're basically like a magpie looking for shiny stuff.
Yeah, but this is the annoying thing about what I've just said, and the most annoying thing about what I've just said, is that Castlevania is a very old game. I mean, we're talking about a game that has been out...
Early 90s, really?
1993. Yeah. It's it's like a Mega Drive PlayStation 1
It's before
game.
PlayStation 1. PlayStation 1 was 95, so it's like SNES, Mega Drive.
And this is the thing that annoys me about it. And that is available now. And it works on the PlayStation 4. Right?
The new one does,
works No, I mean, this one, I've got this. I've downloaded the games and started playing them.
Well, the Requiem one, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, I've downloaded it and it works fine on the PlayStation 4. And if it works fine on the PlayStation 4, then that means it works fine on the PlayStation 5.
In theory, so why not they've made a conscious decision to say no to it.
Yeah, they've made a conscious decision, and I question that decision. I question the logic behind it. If you're putting stuff on the PlayStation Network that's from the PS1 era or the PS2 era, right, and then surely that should be available to play on whichever Sony console you have. If not, then why is it on the PlayStation Network?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the idea that gamers respect history.
Yeah.
The gaming industry doesn't.
No. And that, I think, is a crying shame.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's lots of games which, let's be honest, about 3 or 4 years, probably more than that now, 5 or 6 years ago, I went back and played Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. At the time I played it originally, it was one of my favourite games ever. Played it now.
Yeah.
Awful. Does not hold up.
Yeah.
That was with an N64, not like a remastered version that's come post-release. So lots of games, keeping a hold of them and playing them doesn't make a great deal of sense as a piece of entertainment, but the history of it, yeah, sure. You can't just ignore your history. You can't just delete history. And the gaming industry seems all too ready to just forget everything and just focus on literally this moment.
I mean, there's that old adage about it. If you don't know where you're from, then you don't know where you are, and you don't know where you're going.
And I feel gaming isn't really learning its lessons. We did this before recently, how there's a games drought coming.
Yeah.
And I don't think people are prepared for it. And I don't mean a drought as in literally nothing. I mean there's just going to be very little.
Yeah, it's going to be very sparse. But that's the time when backwards compatibility is the most important. Yeah,
but the gaming industry isn't learning from that. The gaming industry seemingly didn't learn from Atari going under.
Yeah.
The gaming industry just doesn't really learn.
It's because when Atari went under, that was over 40 years ago, And so it could never happen now. We're too big. They said the Titanic was too big. It could never sink.
Honestly, though, people who say that kind of overlook how big Atari were.
Yeah, I know. They basically ruled the gaming industry at that point.
Yeah, they were the gaming industry. They never ruled it. Atari and the gaming industry were synonyms of each other.
Yeah, and so with how sparse games are going to become in the next few months, especially with more lockdowns and more restrictions on movement and stuff like that.
There's going to be some big hitters, don't get me wrong, but there's going to be few and far in between.
Yeah, and people are going to want to explore back catalogues of games and then find if they've got the new next generation consoles, they're going to find that you can't use those to play those games. You've got to get one of the older consoles to play those games. And the price of the older consoles will go up. And it'll all have a knock-on effect, forcing up the price of things artificially that before might not have cost that much.
The gaming industry's been run by Scrooge McDuck. I'm fairly certain of it. Just in his vault, jumping into pennies. That's not how that's not how pennies work. Pennies aren't liquid.
No, they're not, and that would really hurt. And you basically, it's diving straight onto a metal plate, effectively.
As it turns out, cartoons aren't real life, so on that, I think we have to wrap up for this week.
Yep.
So comment below and join our conversation, and we'd love to hear what you have to add to anything we've talked about today. If you like the video, give us a thumb, sub, or a bell, or all three if you prefer. But that's it from Impossible Mission this week. Join us every Thursday here in a Geek Show for more video game chit-chat. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.